welcome to our show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Angela.
Yeah, so what is your research focus and what is inspired you to this area?
Yeah, I have a pretty, I don't know if it's a unique focus. I think everyone has this story, but my aunt was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease, one type of dementia, when she was 46. So really young. And so that had a profound impact on my family. My cousins were only 12, 14, and 16 when their mom was diagnosed. And so that really shifted my interests. Academically, I was just studying my master's at the time to focusing on reducing the risk of dementia first, and then later improving the lives of people living with dementia. And my focus is on physical activity and its role, and that really became because I had an undergraduate degree in kinesiology, which is focused around movement. I was an athlete growing up, and so I knew that the benefits of physical activity were so broad. It seemed to make sense that it should also be beneficial for dementia risk and the well-being of people with dementia. At the time when I started researching, there was just the first few papers were coming out suggesting that physical activity reduced the risk of dementia. Now, in the nearly 20 years since, the area has really grown.
Yeah, so could you explain how exercise reduce and what kind of exercise do you recommend?
Yeah, so physical activity, so if you look at groups of people who are physically active versus inactive, the people who are active have about 30 to 40% lower risk of having dementia than those who are inactive. There's a number of different ways that it likely contributes. When I first started looking at it, people just thought, well, your vascular, the health of your heart and your blood vessels is better with exercise. And that's true. That affects the blood circulation in your brain as well. But we know it also is associated with increased levels of what are called, growth factors, and specifically ones that are involved in both the growth of new neurons, so parts of your brain, as well as the ones that are involved in creating new connections in your brain, so strengthening kind of the overall system. So physical activity in terms of reducing dementia risk, likely that's how it's impacting. It's strengthening kind of your brain's ability to repair itself and to grow new neurons.
So what kind of exercise do you recommend for older adults?
Thank you. You asked that. The type of exercise that's recommended for reducing the risk of dementia is actually quite similar to what we would recommend for older adults more generally.
Okay.
So cardiovascular exercise or aerobic exercise, things like walking, swimming, biking, that's where there's the most research. So doing any of those types of activities, and I say choose the one that you like, will help reduce your risk. And they recommend, doing it most days of the week for, let's say, about half an hour each time.
Okay.
There's also evidence that doing strength training, so the same types that will strengthen your muscles and your bones, will also improve your thinking abilities. So if you do, standing up out of the chair, sitting down, standing up, that's a strengthening activity that you can do easily at home. Push-ups, if you can't do them on the ground, doing them against the wall. Those are examples of exercises that you can do, and that's also associated with better thinking abilities, better memory. The other one that there's not quite as much evidence at yet, but is quite building exercise, is actually Tai Chi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Tai Chi has been examined mostly out of China, but also with studies out of North America, and the protective effects seem to be about as good as doing aerobic or resistance training. So any of those activities that you enjoy, I would try to integrate. So doing more types of exercises probably better than doing just one, but the most important thing is to be active. So choose the activities that you enjoy, that are easy to access, and that you'll continue doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. So something you can easily implement to your life,
Exactly.
and you're enjoying doing it. It's more sustainable, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we know another part, that routine, that enjoyment is important. Having people around you who support you in it. So if you can do the exercise with someone else who will, make you show up and make you enjoy it more, I think that's also really beneficial, whether that's a friend, a neighbor, a family member. Having that social support around you really helps too.
So it's not only help you with your physical activity, it's also help you with emotionally, right? It's social, right?
Absolutely. Exercise, we often, when we study it in clinical trials, often it's very controlled and we look at these physical and maybe cognitive outcomes, but we know that broadly it has benefits, right? If you, an exercise class or even just going out for a walk with someone else can be a socially enriching activity. It contributes, one, certainly to your mood, and we can measure that, but also just, broadly to your mental and social well-being. I always think of, I run regularly with my neighbor, and I feel like it's kind of like going for a coffee, but you happen to be moving at the same time.
Exactly.
Right? It really supports those relationships. Yeah.
So in terms of physical activity, what's the difference from general old adults to people with dementia? What kind of program, the difference?
Yeah. The interesting thing is that the physical activity that we recommend isn't that different.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because often people think about a person with dementia and they think about the very end stages.
Yeah.
And certainly in that stage it's challenging.
Yeah.
People can have mobility problems, fall risk, they can have a harder time engaging. But the actual range of dementia is anything from fairly mild impairments that are big enough to affect how you live day to day, but that you might not notice if you didn't know that the person had dementia. And people living with dementia can be anyone from someone with young onset like my aunt who is very physically healthy to someone who is frail and maybe much later in life in their 90s. So the actual exercise we recommend isn't different, though you have to adapt it. But I'd say the biggest thing is the way that it's delivered has to be different or supported, whether it's by family members. So they may need more help getting to programs or activities, right? Because they may not be able to drive anymore. It could be that, loud music can be overwhelming. So music is enjoyable, but maybe it has to be quieter for a person with dementia. The way that an exercise instructor talks to a person with dementia might have to be slightly slower, using one instruction at a time rather than a long series of instructions.
Okay.
So it's the way we deliver. They might have to pay attention a bit more closely to how they're moving, whether they follow the exercises. So it's not so much what they can do. We actually often think of physical activity as somewhere people can continue to succeed and improve even with dementia, if it's delivered in the right way.
Okay. So Laurie, could you tell me how do we motivate people exercise more, and also how do we make exercise program more accessible?
Absolutely. So motivation to exercise is an issue for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? From the 20-year-old to, someone with dementia and later life. It doesn't matter. We all can find other things that distract us and feel more comfortable day to day. There's very few exceptions. I think, with dementia, there can be increasing levels of, or it's a little bit more difficult sometimes to initiate activities, even more so than us. But I think the same principles and how we get people active are the same. Having positive supports around you is really important, and that is often family members or their friends that encourage them to get out. It's giving them having those positive supports in their community, exercise instructors who understand dementia and deliver dementia in a supportive way. Don't think, they can't participate. Sometimes it's finding the right activity. And I think of one gentleman who I worked with a bit, and he talked about the same thing. Like, it's great, I know this is beneficial, but how do I get myself going? But you know what happened is he found the right program. There's a program out of Kitchener called Golf for Life. It's run out of the Rockway golf course by the city. And he had never golfed a day in his life, but he kept getting people who encouraged him. He knew a few other people with dementia in the program. He finally got out. And you wouldn't believe how much he lit up when he talked about this golfing program. He just loved it. And it was the people around him, it was getting outside, it was, having, staff that continued to support him, to encourage, to improve, even though he was living with dementia. And the golf program won't be for everyone, but I think we can find a similar program for everyone, because people with dementia are just like us. They have different preferences for whether they do it in a group or, with just one other person. Do they want to be in a group program? Do they want to be outdoors? And so I think it's recognizing what that person's what their personality was across their life. What activities have they liked before? And is there a way to make those activity or something similar accessible to them?
Wow, so you never know, right? You just have to try it, give it a try, right?
That's right. That's right. And finding that trial and error process.
Yes, I'm glad to have this kind of program being so supportive to the people with dementia, right?
The Golf program, For Life program, is really amazing. I had the opportunity to go out with them one day, and just the amount of joy and support and encouragement, amongst the staff, amongst volunteers, amongst the people was incredible.
Okay, great. So what other programs do you know?
Yeah, so there's, in terms of our community, there's a few programs available. There's the Minds in Motion program, which is an exercise and cognitive training program that's offered by the Alzheimer's Society. There's a new program that's just starting up this fall, but will be offered over the next few years by the YMCA, which is called the Delight program. So this is a program that we were involved in developing at the university. So it's really about living well with dementia broadly, but it has exercise, it has a component on healthy eating, and it has a broader social and educational component that also talks about mental well-being, social support and engagement, sleep quality as well. So the YMCA, the Kaufman YMCA will be offering that, this fall, and then we expect additional sessions in the coming year, which will be really exciting. On, in terms of the support of people living with dementia, I'm calling on the community to really think about small actions that they can take to support people living with dementia in their community. It's great to think about people with dementia as part of the richness and diversity of our communities, and by taking small steps, and by being patient, by paying attention and helping them if needed, it can really change their ability to participate. In terms of exercise, I challenge people to just integrate a little bit more into their everyday lives. Sometimes we think it's just not enough time in the day to get out there. But sometimes we should just take our break, take a lunch break, take an evening break to get out there and be active. I also think we can just support each other. And if we think about, people living with dementia, or a group that needs more support than others, we can think about everywhere from their family members through to the way we build cities can really change how people can participate. Find out if someone watching is interested in finding out more about the projects, they can look at the website for the Research Institute for Aging. It's www.the-ria.ca.